Hey guys, so I wanted to talk to you today about something real simple, which is meditation and the benefits of it and the different ways that people think about it. So, as some of you know, I grew up with a dad who taught me meditation at a very, very young age. And it was really hard when I first started with him. Now, I would observe him in the living room with just like a blanket around his head to keep him warm, right in front of the window, sitting on his chair, and he would just be there in silence. And I didn't know exactly what it was when I was real small, but I knew I shouldn't interrupt him. And so I would just kind of wait until he was done. And when he noticed me, he'd say, "Oh, I didn't know you were there." It wasn't like he was like, "I have to meditate." Like if he knew his kids were up, then he would have played with us. But I just knew to kind of like respect what he was doing. So when I was that young, I tried it a little bit. He explained it a little bit. And but it was very, very hard, right? Let me know if I'm in my Sages page. I do this all the time and I'm not sure if I'm in the right page, so give me a comment if I'm in my Sages page. And so I remember then, practicing it a lot more when I went off to college, practicing yoga and then practicing meditation. Like I knew I should just sit in my room in the morning or in the evening and just practice sitting. And what he taught me and what the kind of the philosophy that we learned is that the breath is king, the breath is queen. And it's like everything is the breath. If you just get too much emotion, if you kind of live in the emotional state that comes up a lot for you, then if you just come back to the breath, then it's all good. You have to learn, as Thich Nhat Hanh has said, and basically what the CD that I wrote, the musical CD, Emotions Sit, that I wrote, is based on Thich Nhat Hanh's philosophy, is that emotions always come up, right? We're human beings. And we should honor that and respect that and entertain it a little bit. And he would say you can entertain them for tea, but don't let them stay for dinner. So the emotions are something that live in the basement of our house, if our body is our home. And we should entertain them for tea, but not let them stay very long, not let them stay for dinner. And so meditation became, I remember one of my first big kind of insights was at my apartment up in New Hampshire, and I finally got it. Like I literally finally felt it in my body. And so when you're sitting there, and I want to talk to you guys about this in terms of kind of your business, how you think about yourself, how you think about your life, how you think about your everyday, routines. And I'll get there in a second, but I wanted to kind of explain the foundation for a second, which is just move a call there. So, which is getting into this space where we feel comfortable with ourselves, where we feel comfortable with our emotions, where we feel comfortable with what we have going on. Okay, so the first time that I felt this in my room, I had been practicing and practicing and practicing. And every single time, I want to say like years, guys. I want to say at least months, but I'm pretty sure it was years of practicing, probably inconsistently, I might say, that I finally got to this place where I found and felt total freedom, where I found and felt total, I don't want to say emptiness, because it was more freeing than an empty feeling. It was like a connection actually to light. I remember feeling light and seeing light and feeling the divine. And I remember my whole body felt like held and hugged. And I was like, oh my gosh. And as soon as you feel that hit you, then you almost want to sabotage it immediately. So, you might say ego, Christians would say Satan, and it tries to sabotage you and say, no, 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 don't go to that feeling, right? But the idea is that what if we can live in that feeling? So I had a pretty big hiatus of meditation when my son was born and all the conflict that was happening. And I kind of let that take over my life for a while. And it was almost like I was angry and upset about the fact that like I didn't have time to meditate, didn't have time anymore. So I'm just gonna not even try. I just was in this kind of perpetual state of scarcity and lack, basically, while I tried to be, strong and on for my son. And so, but lately, there have been things, especially in, trying to make it work as an entrepreneur, that have felt heavy. Now, in doTERRA, for example, we have all these amazing systems in place, and I love systems. You guys know I came from a event planning background, and I think it's really important to have some kind of routine and have some kind of system that at least you have a foundation to work from, and then you can adapt and be flexible with where you go from there. So, for example, last week, was it, or 2 weeks ago, I had 2 speaking gigs, and I prepare like somewhat. It's just like my yoga classes. I prepare in the sense that I get it in my body, right? I do a full yoga practice before I teach yoga, and I get it in my body. But I've been practicing for such a long time that I don't have to write out every single thing that I'm doing in a yoga class anymore. And it's similar when I speak. It kind of depends, because if I'm speaking on, meditation, I'm going to get it in my body beforehand. If I'm speaking on aromatherapy, I might brush up on, the latest research, or, read something new every day like I do anyway. But I'm going to be a little more intentional and take notes for that particular subject. If I'm talking about, energy work and chakras, I'm going to read a little bit more about that. If I'm talking about empowerment, I'm going to read something on empowerment and success, or, something inspirational. And then I read it and I take notes. But as soon as I take the notes, I get it out of my body, I get it out of my system, write it down, and now I'm good, and I can ad lib, So lately I've been practicing meditation as a way not to just kind of be in my body, but also to look for insights. So my yoga classes are they're very spiritual, and I have a sense of empowerment, but they're kind of silly, because I've been doing this for such a long time, and it used to be very, very, very serious for me, like to the point where when I was dating my ex-boyfriend and we were living in our house together, we would meditate a lot. And, but I would do like an hour and a half yoga practice every single morning. And if I got interrupted from that physical practice, I would be a bear, and I was not happy. And I realized, like, wow, Jenny, this is like the exact opposite of how yogis should be, like going with the flow, being in the moment. And I was so upset when I didn't get that full practice, that I had to really kind of look at myself and change that. And so, it used to be very serious for me, and it still is a serious practice, but guys, like, life gets in the way, so as I'm talking about this, you can kind of think generally, but I also want you to think about your doTERRA business as well, that, and I'll get more into that in a second, but about how it feels in your body. Okay. So lately I've been telling my students, like, when you're sitting in meditation, you can feel the mind go crazy. Like, you can feel it, all these to-do lists come up, and like, what do I have to do? And blah, blah, blah. I was like, you can actually use the first 5 or 10 minutes of your meditation to write down to-do lists, like get it out of your head, because it's amazing when you sit for just a moment of the day, how many things come up. Right? Otherwise, they're all there and they're like scattered and it feels overwhelming. But it's amazing how you can feel it and get it out of your system, and now write it in a nice little list. Go back later, check it off, and then now you're open for insights to come in. Okay? So I had to ask some friends of mine a little while ago, like, how do you pray? Because I was brought up half Christian, half Buddhist. And on one side, I learned prayers that were just kind of rhetoric, like tradition, like you just said them, and there was no thought to it. It was just a repetition. And I never vibed with that, because I didn't actually know what I was talking about and like how to pray. So some of my friends who were, really practicing their spiritual philosophy, I asked them, like, yo, how do you do this, right? And so it's been really interesting, like, and for me, it comes down to having a gratitude practice, really. And the other side of that is a lot of my friends who have been in religious practices for most of their life, but haven't been great listeners, have asked me how to meditate. And I said, I think of praying as asking spirit for something, or giving gratitude. And I think of meditation as sitting and listening to that energy and spirit coming into you. And so I have started meditating with this idea of listening for insights on what to do. And it's been incredible, because here's what's been happening in relation to the business, for example. So in systems, we talk about, going on doTERRA.com and looking at, the empowered success suite, which are amazing. The live guide, the share guide, the build guide. And then of course, the launch guide, the sales guide, that they're all coming up. And that's very important to go through, every once in a while, and to teach people how to go through those. And then on top of that, there's calls like this. There's, videos you can watch from leaders. There's all these sorts of series that you can get bogged down with. And then there's like successful people where you can get memberships, to someone who is an expert in network marketing. There's memberships that you can, take with all these coaches these days. And I was doing some of that, and I loved this one coach that I was working with. That it was like group coaching, and I loved it. But for some reason, I kept missing the call. I kept like having a different something or other to do. And so I'm looking at my finances going, and every time I saw the name of that charge, I felt like heavy and tight in my body. I was like, why am I feeling like that? And it was interesting, because even though I got so much value out of it, I wasn't like directly applying what I learned from that particular coach for whatever reason. And I kept looking at YouTube videos from a different coach. And so I started really like in my meditations and in my insight practices, I kept feeling like, get rid of that membership. And I kept saying, but no, there's awesome coaching in that. And there's like awesome classes that I can take, and blah, 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 blah. And whenever the mind, it starts to like argue with itself like that, you kind of know then that it's the wrong piece to follow. And so every time I thought of getting rid of that subscription, I actually felt lighter. And so this morning I finally got rid of that. And like this new practice kind of started emerging. Like I started doing more videos, and it was almost like the energy and spirit was telling me like, you need more time to put your stuff out there instead of consuming so much, because you have all the answers, right? Because we all have all the answers. And it's just that if we can tap into that kind of energy, that our own divinity, then we'll hear more of the answers that way. But if we're bogged down with so much outside stuff constantly, believe me, I am a huge fan of getting like external stuff, but I think that we need the same amount, if not more, of internal. So this morning I had heard this stat where, in terms of family time for people who are on social media a lot, the average person is on social media for about 3 hours a day. And the average time spent with family is about 37 minutes per day. And I don't know if that meant like, even if the family is home, then I think I'm on the wrong one, but that's okay. Even if the family is home, then I think there are still pockets of time where we're like alone and on our social media. You see what I mean? So I'll just finish up here, and then I'll see if I can switch the video to the correct community, but that's fine. Hopefully you guys get something out of this. But anyway, I wanted to, for whatever that's worth, give you that insight today about how much meditation has been helping me from a standpoint, not so much of clearing my mind just for the sake of clearing my mind, but for the sake of letting insights come through. So That's all I wanted to say to you today, but have an awesome week and I love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.